Ladies and gentlemen, but there's not too many of us, so I still say ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. This is a special council meeting slash a work session. This is a city council special meeting for April the 15th, 2025. The time is 5:35. Okay. I've asked Council Hewitt if he'll open the meeting. He's gracefully accepted.
Our dear gracious eternal and Father, as we come before thee this beautiful evening, we're so thankful for this area that we live in, for our beautiful town and the people that in it that make it such a great place to live. We ask that thou bless us as a city staff and council, that we can, mayor, that we can make good decisions that are good for all of us and help the community to become a place that we continue to become a place that we love to live and raise our families. Please bless us and help make these good decisions. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Chief Scott Spencer will, from the fire department, will lead us to the pledge.
Audience, please rise. Please repeat the Pledge of Allegiance after me. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, we'll go on to C. We have one resolution. Interlocal agreement with Utah County regarding the 2025 municipal election. Okay, Kim.
Mayor and Council, staff received the interlocal agreement from the Utah County Elections Office. We reviewed, Dave and Brandon and I reviewed it, along with several of the local city recorders in our group had a lot of comments. So we made some tweaking. There was a funny sentence in part of the one of the paragraphs that talked about land, and so we got rid of land and property. We got rid of that. Any notifications come to me instead of the mayor. Most of the changes we dealt with in the Exhibit A. A lot of it had to do with the canvassing, in that they have to have us our canvass reports by noon on the day of our canvass because of issues we've had in the past. And then there were some things about, we added information about equipment, that the county is responsible for equipment maintenance, troubleshooting, supply replacement for the issues from last year. They're supposed to provide us timely communication because there's a law that says when they release reports, it goes to the state first, and prior we've had some issues with, then we don't get anything and the state's already got information, so they've got to do that more timely. And then just some consistency and public reporting we wanted, and the time for getting this information done. So Brandon and Dave and I have already reviewed this, and yeah, that's me.
So has the county approved your changes?
Yeah.
Okay, any further discussion, questions for Kim? If not, I'm ready for a motion.
Mayor, I motion that we approve the resolution, the interlocal agreement with Utah County regarding 2025 municipal election.
I'll second.
Okay, have a motion been seconded. Roll call vote starting with Council Hewitt.
Yes.
Council Rowley.
Yes.
Council Moss.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Resolution. Okay, that's the only action item we had on the agenda. The main thrust of this council meeting tonight is a work session, and it'll be on the freeway interchange betterments. Joe, how did you want to proceed? In light of, I know Eric's here. Appreciate you being here, Eric. Did you? I know our presentationers are in traffic.
Well, there's been a change.
Oh, there's
So
been a
anyway,
change.
Eric is actually going to be the lead for this
Wonderful.
presentation. So we are really glad that Eric Rasband is here with, Region 3, with you about Region 3. He is the project manager for the Payson Main Street, Interstate 15 interchange. And so the design team has prepared a presentation for the city council tonight. We, as was indicated in the agenda request in your packet, and as Eric will further explain, is we are looking at providing you information, but we would also like direction. Now, there's no need for a motion tonight, but just some informal direction of any additional information that maybe the consultant team can provide to you in order to make a good decision. There's likely going to be things tonight that you need costs, or you need more pictures, or whatever it may be. But I believe that the way that it's structured is he's going to provide a little bit of background with the interchange project. I'm sure you have a lot of questions. This is going to be very impactful and hopefully a positive experience for Payson City. But if we could focus on where we know that we have limited time tonight and they want to have direction, if we can follow along with the presentation. At certain times in this presentation, there will be some requests to get your feedback on the particular item we're talking about, whether it is design or lighting or landscaping. And so just know that at times through this presentation, they'll ask for that feedback. But if there's other questions, that he'll give a quick overview of the project itself and where it's at now. But we do anticipate that we will come back to the city council next month in May, and we'll talk a little bit more about the overall project and the timing. So if there's some information you need tonight to help wrap your head around it, so you understand what we're trying to accomplish with this work session, absolutely ask those questions. But a lot of the detail on the design, timelines and things like that, if we could wait till the meeting in May, then that could give us the time needed tonight, specifically for aesthetics and betterments. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Eric Russ.
Jill, I have a quick question for you. So with the betterments, and I don't know if everybody knows this, what our responsibility is versus, is that part of your presentation? Okay, great.
Absolutely. So we'll turn the time over to Eric and go from there.
Eric, just before you take over, I'd like to make excused Council Hyatt and Council Christensen. They've had other things that come up, so that's why they're not here. And we do have Dave Tuckett and Robert Mills online, so appreciate them making that effort. So time's yours. His birthday? Well, then, no wonder he's not here. Okay, thank you, Eric.
Thank you for your patience. The freeway, I think, was shut down completely at 4 South, and they just got it opened up right as I was going through. So,
I made the comment, that's kind of apropos for you, Dot.
yeah, no doubt. It
You
was,
need more lanes.
like, as I hit the S curves in Provo, I was like, oh, no, no.
Well, thank you.
So, yeah. As Joe mentioned, we came and visited with you, several months ago, and we didn't come and visit with you during the legislative session because we knew that there were things that were happening legislatively. And so we just kind of wanted to stay back away from that, process. We plan to re-engage with the council and the mayor as we move forward. We've been working with staff on bi-weekly meetings. They've been engaged in the process, and we really appreciate their support. Moving forward, this has been a great team. Our goal is to actually start moving dirt early next year, if we can get all of our ducks in a row. Yeah. With construction, the actual roadway construction, 27 and 28. There's a lot of soils in the area that we've got to do some work to strengthen those soils so that they can bear the road itself. So we're in the process of, we've been doing a lot of investigation in the fields. You've seen our drilling rigs out there, working with PRI and some of those stuff that they're doing with, looking at forward compatibility. You know, that there's a larger interchange, and then the project that we've got funded. We want to make sure that everything is forward compatible. So we are kind of at a point where we thought we would be at this point in time. And we're getting ready to negotiate our phase 2 scope of work, which is the meat and potatoes of the design. And with that, we really could use some direction, or, you know, we've got a great relationship with Payson. I don't expect a hard commitment that would be good to have some direction moving forward, knowing that there are details that we need to continue to work through as we move forward. So just kind of in the background, be thinking about that and how we can work together as we're moving forward. I'd like to capture, if the city wants us to capture some of the betterment designs, I'd like to capture this in this modification. It's not the end of the world if we don't. It just makes it easier for us to keep going in a seamless fashion and not impact our schedule to get that early work done.
So
So
really looking forward to working with you.
Yeah.
We really are.
it's been a great relationship, so thank you. With that, I'm gonna kind of outline the different types of betterments that we have. We have a baseline budget that the city has access to for aesthetics. And then there's also utilities that would not be covered under the normal roadway. So we want to dive into some of those issues as we move forward. So just kind of background, you're gonna see this graphic a lot. This is our base project, the orange. There's a larger project. This does include the structure over the railroad and realigning the railroad to accommodate the future interchange. So we're working closely with our partners at Union Pacific Railroad. That's probably the challenge that we see. Their process takes time to get through, and getting through their process. So both, next one, Jill. So we have made some decisions on cross section. On the left is a cross section of what we plan to build. The roadway was cleared environmentally for 2 lanes in each direction with a raised median down the center. Active transportation path on one side and then a sidewalk on the other side. So just some elements associated with this design. We're planning to build the raised median in its final configuration, final location. So any widening that we would do would be to the outside on both sides. Except for we are planning to put that active transportation path on the side of the road in its final location. You'll see some slopes there on that graphic on the left. That's for drainage. That's a temporary drainage system that we're installing, knowing that when we come in with the future project, we're going to be putting curb gutter and sidewalk in and piping that stormwater.
As you widen
Yeah.
down the road.
Exactly. So I want to highlight some features. Those slopes on either side of that natural roadway prism. Normally, we would put street lighting in those areas. If we put street lighting in those areas now, that would be a total tear out and reconstruction at a future point. And so there, we have some options for lighting. We want to at least propose to you. Moving forward, over here on the right, sorry, go back. Yeah, you're good. There on the right is just the final configuration. So it shows kind of that upper one is really that comparison to now to what the final is. It's a little smaller graphic, so it doesn't show up quite as well. And then there's some areas where we've got curves and with design speeds of the road, we're building super elevations, and so those medians won't be quite as wide in those areas, as well as at the intersections for turning movements. So, okay, go ahead, next, Joe.
Eric, in the meantime, when it's just that 2-lane road, is it gonna have a shoulder, or is it gonna be?
Yes, we're planning for an 8-foot shoulder.
Okay, very good.
On the outside, I believe on the inside it's a foot or two up against that raised median area. That 8-foot shoulder is primarily, I think we're planning to convert that to a bike lane for active transportation, and then a more of a family facility off the corridor.
And is there any area for vehicles to pull off if needed though?
It would be in that 8-foot.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
There are questions about jurisdiction. We're building this roadway. Who will own it at the end of the day? We don't know that. That's a decision that we're gonna have to encounter at a future date. A conversation that we'll have. Ultimately, from a UDOT perspective, we have an appointed body very similar to the council and the mayor, led by people that the governor has appointed to the Transportation Commission. They're the ones that make the decision of whether or not it becomes a UDOT jurisdictional road. With that, we're trying to build it to UDOT standards, and this this is a key component, to our UDOT standards, so, you know, our structure is gonna be big enough to accommodate the vehicle load that we normally carry. But, accesses, so you have I-15 on the left, those are the ramps that we're gonna be constructing, you have Arrowhead Trail. So this is the area that TRI has, primary ownership, I believe, in this area. This is slightly different than the station area plan that we've seen. So we plan most likely for a full signalized intersection halfway between Arrowhead Road and the I-15 ramps. And then halfway between that intersection and the ramps or Arrowhead would be right in, right outs, that there would be no left turn movements going into or out of those intermediate quarter access points. That just helps facilitate, if it's built to our standards, then it's easier for us if that's what the desire is, for UDOT to take over jurisdiction. So just, that's a thought moving forward. The TOD, the plan that we have seen, I think has 2 more access points in that same area than what we're planning for. So just big picture. Okay. Going into the aesthetics, we're going to talk about aesthetics, pretty stuff. And then also the betterments for utilities. We're going to talk about some of the baseline budgets, what would be included in our baseline versus what is over and above. And we'll give you some examples, not project specific, just so that you understand high level what we're talking about. Go ahead to the next one. Okay, so the aesthetics along the roadway and at the interchange would be established by our aesthetics committee. The policy gives us a budget, $100,000 per interchange, and then 0.75% of the overall construction value. That's approximately $500,000 to $600,000 for this project. So that's money, in essence, that Payson can use for whatever they would like. If it's powder coating the signals, it would come out of that money. And I'm going to go through some of those examples of what would be betterments versus baseline.
Anything we want above and beyond that 500,000.
Anything above would be great. Yeah, yeah. So conduit for irrigation lines, junction boxes for irrigation lines, conduit and junction boxes for street lighting that is not the UDOT standard. And there's been some changes recently in state law with this last legislative session about street lighting. We'll cover that as well. And so any questions about this baseline budget? Okay, let's go to the next one, Jim. So from a street lighting perspective, Councilman McHugh, this is slightly different than the information we gave when we met with you in the smaller group conversation. As we went back and reviewed the policy, there's some modifications. So it's intersection, or it's street lighting at the freeway ramp and termini points, as well as at the signalized intersections. So our baseline does not include street lighting along the corridor. If the city would like to do that, that's an option, and we'll cover some baseline costs or some basic costs of what that would mean. The recent legislation that has changed is, it used to be that anything behind the curb and gutter, including the street lighting, was the responsibility of the local government. The legislation has taken street lighting off of that table, as long as those street lights are designed to UDOT standards. So if the city desired to install UDOT standard lighting, one, it's a less expensive fixture, but long-term maintenance becomes the responsibility of UDOT. If the city desired to go with decorative lighting, that's a cost, and the long-term maintenance becomes the responsibility of the city, because that's a different than our standard.
What happens if the road's turned over to the city or county? We still have responsibility for the lights?
No, if it's a city road, then it would become the city's responsibility to maintain. Okay, so some of those betterments, going with corridor lighting, we'll cover some of the options, as well as trail lighting. And so, go ahead, let's go to the next one, Jill. So these are examples of UDOT standard lighting. They're the large, overhead lights. They go up 35 to 40 feet in the air. Our baseline is the galvanized, so either that's roadside option on the left or the middle bit barrier. And so for this project, if there was a desire and you wanted to design to UDOT standard, those options where you come out both sides and install it in the median could be an option. And there wouldn't be throwaway with that if we did that.
And as you expand it, if you put another lane on each side, then they would be on the curb side.
Well, if we put it in the center median with this middle option, that would be the long term. What
We
we
wouldn't
would-
have to.
Yeah.
That's what I'd be expand.
Yeah.
What's the requirements as far as how far apart the lights have to be, how many there has to be?
They're, I think it's about 200 feet. It would go through a lighting design. And, based on the particular roadway or the luminaire type and how it throws it out, these standards is about every 200 feet.
So with the dual arm, that UDOT covers that cost 100% then, right?
No.
Okay, so what do you cover on the lighting versus where do you,
So for the corridor, we're only installing it at
Okay,
the traffic
that's right,
signals
that's
and at the ramps.
okay,
So if the city desired to do this, those would be about $5,300 per unit. That's without the powder coating. If you wanted powder coating, about an additional 500. At 200 feet, our corridors 2.5 to 3 miles long, just order of magnitude.
But you'd maintain that as long as it was UDOT owned.
If it becomes a UDOT owned facility, it would be long-term maintenance for UDOT. Questions about our standard?
What's the, was coded the black, I would assume, versus
It's about $500 additional, so that 5,300, if it was the center option,
Yeah.
add another 500 for
As
each.
far as the maintenance of it, the look of it over a period of time, is there any difference?
Yeah, we'd use powder coating because it tends to last for the life of the pole. If you just did a paint, we'd have to go in and update the paint, and that powder coating sticks really well to the pole.
Which we have been doing on our light signals in Payson.
I don't anticipate that's what we're probably.
well, if we do lights, it basically eats up our whole 500,000.
It would go fast.
Yeah,
Yeah, it would go fast.
But, but again, it's the longevity of it, and the lifetime.
Could we space them differently or no? Do we
Um,
have less lights?
Yeah, that's like, I don't know that question.
Because we want it to be lit and safe, we don't want it to feel like total downtown metropolis with a bunch of light pollution either, so.
I think those are details we could work through with your team.
Okay.
So, yeah. There are some AASHTO standards for lighting. And so I think if we go forward with lighting, we should try to meet those standards. I don't know how much flexibility that's something we'd have to ask somebody that knows a lot more about that than I do. Next one, these are decorative lighting. These are just examples, throughout the region. Really, these costs vary quite a bit, depending on what happens. These at, roughly $5,000 to $10,000 per pole.
There's a lot more poles too. Huh?
And yeah, oftentimes you gotta go with the tighter space. So
And they don't light it up as well as
that's correct. So if the city wanted something like this or the option, but didn't have the full funding to install the luminaires themselves, one of the options would be to use that budget that you have to install conduits, junction boxes, even foundations for the poles. So that we would know where the future locations are. The city, when funding becomes available, either with city resources or a contractor comes in and installs those at a future date. So that's something that we can do to make it forward compatible, if that's what the city would like. And then trail lighting. These are some options of trails. Definitely have the direct decorative street lighting options similar to the roadway lighting. This is an example up in here of a trail side bollard. Definitely would require more density, but likely less expensive. the general infrastructure underground is probably similar, other than the foundations for them in the junction box locations. So, just options.
We'd have to move those at Manchester Road to go.
Well, I think this would be for the trail that we're going to install, so you could offset them along the trail. I don't believe that we would impact those locations in the future.
How many trails do you see with lighting? I've just never been out there where I've seen trails with lighting.
It varies. Yeah. Jordan River Trail is a trail I use on a regular basis. It is not lit. Got trees, growth. It depends.
Depends on the area
Yeah.
and the aesthetics or lack thereof.
Yeah. I use it.
Safety of it.
Yeah, I use it heavily this time of year because the sun is, extended into the season. I'm able to get off work and I get out with my wife and we do our exercises together before the sun sets or right as twilight hits.
Well, another question with that too, is if we did the overhead lights in the middle where they go out both sides, would that be enough light to put onto the trail?
It would help. I don't know. They're fixtures and the way the light gets dispersed. With those fixtures, there's probably options to help with that. But a lighting design would help us figure that out. So this is in Nephi. They couldn't afford to install the lights immediately with the project. So they had us put it in the underground and then they came back later with city forces. And installed the lights on the underground infrastructure. Okay, questions about street lighting?
I guess another question I have, if we wanted to have something that kind of ties into the front runner station and they're probably gonna have some decorative stuff, we could do it just a little ways on the east side and then go to regular.
I think we could customize that design based on your feedback, so. But if you'd like us to start including it, it would be good to have some feedback that, yes, you do want corridor lighting, you want to include it. That way we can include it in the design phase that we're negotiating right now. You're not ready to make a decision, we get it. So we're handing you information right now.
All this is good information, we can know over.
What's that?
All this is good information, we can know over.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Okay. Okay, then the next one is the aesthetics. This is either stamped concrete, plantings, rock mulch, that type of thing on the side of the road, between the curb and gutter, active transportation, sidewalks, kind of filling out the rest of the right-of-way elements. So basic line is a basic form liner. Zach is here. How far can can the relief go on that, for structures?
Standard is 1 inch. of
1 inch.
textural relief.
So if you get on a structure wall, 1 inch of relief or change in movement. So, would be our baseline. Bridge walls, parapet, lining, galvanized chain link fencing. What are required for pedestrian safety? We are putting pedestrian, I believe we're putting pedestrian crossing across the structure. Won't be connecting anywhere right now, but we're thinking about when it happens. Accent colors to the bridge girders, the beams that support the bridge deck itself, and then galvanized signals and light poles. That's our baseline. Oftentimes the city want additional lighting on the structure, decorative fencing that is beyond that chain link fence, powder coated signs and light poles, city logos. City logos or addresses on the structure is in flux right now. I'm gonna talk through those issues. I've spent some time with our aesthetics committee we met with your staff on Thursday and went through the same presentation. They asked some great questions that spurred some discussion with our aesthetics team, and so we have some feedback on those issues. So go ahead. Go back, Jill. That limited to 1 panel per direction per travel in each city. That there is a change to that. based on, some of the changes in the aesthetics. Robert asked why, and it's really because it creates more maintenance for us on, the structure and on the MSE walls around the structures, and I'll kind of describe those maintenance related issues as we get some different photos.
So I get a question on that. So some of the examples I saw, they're just kind of something on the side of the interchange instead of on the structure itself. So it is, can you put something on the structure itself and have it stamped in it? And-
Yeah, let's get there.
Okay.
And we'll show you. So we're building a very, very light structure. We're thinking about long-term structure. You know, our roadway, we planned for, I believe, in 2040, 2050. We're currently evaluating the 2050 needs. Those structures are, have a 75-year lifespan. So we're oversighting that structure, thinking about the long-term viability of this corridor and what we need. Plus, our data is showing by 2050, the original environmental study had 2040 as the horizon. By 2050, that additional 10 years, we're going to be in the intentionality. And so we're trying to figure out how to accommodate that. It's true lanes and turning lanes that are going to be needed. So, and that will be over the railroad as well as I-15. Next one. Okay, so this is our baseline, either no fencing up on top. You can see there's some relief on those walls from the cross street underneath the structure up to the structure. That's really what we call an MSC wall. It's part of the structure itself that holds the dirt back in place. It's an interlocked piece of concrete, similar to Legos or something like that, that lock together. They hold the soil back for the structure itself. Those colored girders underneath, that would be also part of the baseline, just standard color. So, and then you can see the broadcast seed up on the side. That's also baseline conditions. Next. So these structures have some enhancements. On the left is some enhanced fencing that exists. On the right, there's both fencing, lighting, and then even landscaping improvements on the side of the road as well. So those are options. Go back. If there's other things, I think that captures them.
Yeah, a little bit, some of the structural elements on the wing wall there were additional. The column, you can see.
Okay. All right, let's go now to the next one. So this one is really decorative fence and the decorative street lighting option. This is up on US 89. Okay, this is the one where there has been a change. I think Councilman Rowley, this gets to your question. Is this the type of city logo that you were thinking of?
Yeah, I was thinking, but I'm thinking it'd be nice if we could put it right in the concrete as you go under the,
We have
instead of the side.
Yeah, we have some other options. So what they're getting to, if you see that on the side of the road, on the side there in that MSC wall, that sign becomes very difficult for us to maintain, and it becomes a catch point for those MSC walls. So they're kind of pivoting and going to either this option or the stamp. But
What about, and maybe a picture, I've seen this before, your presentation before, but what about, like, for example, like the new Layton City exit, they have a sign that's freestanding kind of as you get off of the freeway.
Could be freestanding. Spanish Fork has an
Yeah,
actual
same Spanish
monument,
Fork
right?
when you get off,
Right.
yeah, I think that looks nice.
Yeah, so those options are available.
And if we had something like that, the maintenance would be our.
That's correct, yeah. So the city recently signed, the master landscaping agreement. I know there was some consternation, but what it really does is it spells out that we won't have an issue on this project. We've already got an agreement in place on who maintains it. So, okay, next one. So this one has Oak Hills Drive. There have been some at, Lehigh or Saratoga's really want some, and there's some back and forth with them. West Jordan has some of these. So that's stamped. What I'm hearing with and it's because of maintenance, there's an issue with freeze thaw. Probably minor in the grand scheme of things, but it degrades the structure over time as water gets into that relief area for that Oak Hills Drive description. And so where we have this as part of a combined interchange, we're gonna be building another structure over Main Street. We probably would look to install, if the city wanted to do this, do the relief maybe in the southbound direction, knowing that in the future, the Main Street structure, we'd probably put one in the northbound, but we probably wouldn't allow the two simultaneously to have one on both sides.
That makes sense to do that.
Okay, so just from a cost, this helps you understand costs associated for structures. If you put those reliefs in the structure, $17,000 to $20,000. Times, this one, I've assumed one on either side. We would definitely work with our aesthetics committee and see if we can get it through. That's something that they might reject, if that's what the city wanted to do. Decorative fence, $300 a foot, about 500 feet, goes up. There's $150,000 of your 600,000 right there. Monument signs, that this would be a Spanish fork option. If you wanted one on the two quadrants, about 35, and certainly the more elaborate you do with those monument signs, the higher it costs. So these are just examples, and then our standard fence, $80 times the 500. So in essence, we pull that 40,000 out of the calculation for whatever happened at the interchange, and then that delta would hit your allowance. Or if you want more, whatever that addition, but that becomes a credit. Questions about interchanges?
What about, maybe you can talk about, what about rocks versus hydro seeds?
That'll be our next conversation. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, with that, Jill. So landscaping. We did get clarification. Dave asked the question, rural versus urban. This is an urban area. Part of the MPO area, part of basically nothing in Utah County is rural anymore. And so we'll treat this as an urban area. So our baseline is stamped colored concrete. There with those fill ditches, we'll probably do, if there's not a betterment or a desire to go with something, we'll probably do some of that broadcast seed in that area because we need it to be free training and absorbing moisture where it can. But so just, and that's really because that's an interim solution. As we get further, then the stamped or colored concrete would be the baseline. Betterments would be the landscape rock. Yeah, the city maintenance agreements, we're good there. Plants and irrigation are betterments. With that, we'll go to the next one, which shows some examples. The left is our kind of the roadside seed max. This is what we would see on I-15 if that's what we did. And then here at the interchange is some options. It says actually the lane option, front of the lane option. So, the rock mulch, the grass, and then some of the plantings that need maintenance.
And where would stamped concrete be? If that's
So in the center median would be a perfect example of where we would we'd probably do a stamped concrete, because we have a lot of agencies that want landscaping in the median. Then they get into it in the maintenance, they have to shut the road down with the lane down, which requires nighttime closures, requires their team to be out at night working. When you start doing all of those things to maintain it becomes, for the first year or two, we see people maintain it at a high level. And then because of all the added restrictions to maintain it come on, the desire to maintain drops off and see, unfortunately, see a lot of weed patching in our center median.
That's something we want to avoid. We want to make sure when we get this pristine, new interchange that we keep it up.
So if you wanted rock mulch, that would, in that center median, that would be a different option. You know, even trees. Trees definitely, this certain types of trees would require less maintenance. I believe there's an issue with it with salt. So some of the issues and concerns that we've heard in the past. But
I think for me, at the end of the day, especially the center median where something's harder to maintain, the less maintenance, the better. I know it looks pretty, but we want it to function as a road, and I don't want it shut down. I don't want Payson city crew people out there trying to mow grass in the middle of I-15.
I probably am sharing opinion, my opinion, based on my experience. And if you want to go with landscaping, we're good. If that's where the city wants to go, we'll support you. So, okay, next options. This would be the stamp color concrete, and this is a center median there on the left, and then on the side, this is the separation between the curb gutter, and the active transportation, the rock mulch, the plantings, the decorative lighting. And then you see on the back side of that, active transportation is a broadcast seat, which is baseline. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Questions?
Yeah, so I've been, drove it to Salt Lake yesterday. And I was looking at all the interchanges, and so many of them probably look really good at one time, and most of them just don't look good at all. I mean, you can see all this tarp coming in, and the weed protection, and the rocks are gone, there's weeds. So I want to make this look good, but be as simple as possible to take care of.
I would rely heavily on your parks department staff. I'm assuming the parks department is who's gonna maintain these features. Rely on their expertise. Spanish Forks is an example of they've made the investment, right? They've done a wonderful job of landscaping, and they maintain it, and they spend a lot of time and money doing it. It's just really about what the city wants.
We anticipate Tracy's Obel and West Good.
What's that?
Tracy's Obel and West Marty, they're good parts.
Yeah.
We anticipate that fees them.
Yeah.
Extensively.
So, are there more landscaping?
Yes.
Yes, so some options. This one is a rock mulch with tree plantings. This is up in Taylorsville. And then, this is the Spanish Forks.
So you say rock mulch, is that just little rocks, or is there other stuff mixed in with it?
It's literally rock.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the rock on top of a wheat area type.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a rock on top of a wheat area. Colored, oftentimes they're colored, they have, this one has two different colors of stone, create some pattern. So, options. Okay, next one. This is in Pleasant Grove. This one actually used to have a water feature that ran down the center of it. It became a challenge for the city to maintain. They did. When it was open, it was a beautiful, magnificent interchange. Yeah.
We'll save all the water features from St. George, if they need them.
I like it. So these are just some examples, you know, for a corridor of our lane. You know, the upper one options in white are the betterments. The gray option would be the baseline product that we would install normally. And so that this project has a $260,000 baseline budget. The total cost is 1.3, so the betterment cost is 1.4.
So something I want to plug in, and hopefully staff's listening, especially around the future station area plan. I'd like to avoid landscaping and shrubbery. I don't want to make anywhere comfortable for people to hang out and camp out. And I think as we get away from that, we can entertain some of those ideas. But I think we avoid coverage in those areas.
So this is a perfect slide to talk about. I have a recent project that's been working with local government. We sat down with our parks department, we designed a robust landscaping plan, it was beautiful. It was if funding wasn't the limit, this is what we do. When we gave them the price tag of $1.8 million, they gagged. And I respect where they were at that point. We were surprised at the numbers. When we got them all assembled and assigned the math to it. So we scrambled. This was towards the tail end of the project, and we're at the beginning of the project. So we had to scramble and get our designers. It cost additional design fees. We basically said, okay, what is your budget? And then we worked with our parks department to modify that design to meet that budget. And so I think that's what I would recommend. If you have a budget that you want to spend, you're comfortable with spending, then we would engage our landscape architects with your parks department folks and design a corridor or an interchange or whatever you would like to spend that money on around that budget. So that's where we have flexibility if that's where the city wants to go. We can meet whatever your budgets are. Okay. Next one, it's just a similar example, 2.3. If we did kind of what we showed for the entire corridor, so between the interchange and the Eagle, $3.5 to $4 million. Next one is city utilities. So we put in a storm drain system as part of the project, but we don't put in water, sewer, irrigation line, the irrigation pipelines that cities are going to. Utilities, gas, fiber, electrical that you want underground. If the city wants those included, quite frankly, now is the time to get those installed.
We're exploring with the funding opportunity, so.
We have provided your staff with some design fees. Because we've heard that we want to include those. That's probably one area that would be, if the city wants to go down that direction, we would like to start that process. So that would be some really positive feedback we could get from you today, if possible. We know that you've been talking about it, but yeah.
I do have a question on that. So if we're only going 2 lanes wide, is there enough room to still put the utilities in the next phase when it's widened or not? Because I want to get the utilities in. If we have to do it now, I want to do it now. But if there's an opportunity maybe to do some later, I'd like to, if there's an option.
I think it's gonna be the lateral cuts, to drop services into the properties adjacent to the corridor. That would be the issue. We go in and install a corridor, development comes in, they need to cut it. We'd like to avoid those cuts, on a brand new surface.
They have a 5-year window anyway, don't you?
Well, I don't know if we do. We would love to, but it seems like too often we pave a project and then a utility comes in and says, "Oh, we want to cut it." So we'll of course work with you, but we're just trying to think about the long term. With this dirt package, we're going to be installing the embankment, and that would be the ideal time to install pipe. If that's what the city wanted to go for. We'll work with you.
Well, in the long run, it's gonna save a ton of money too, because you're trying to do it after you're doing it all while you're doing construction, so it's gonna cost a lot less.
Yeah, you basically build the road up and lay the pipe, build the road, around it. There's some efficiency that's gained if we include it. These are just more examples of, these meet the city standards of placement for irrigation, the culinary water, the sanitary sewer. So that's all within the prism of or if we're gonna be constructing. Any questions? That was the bad.
Presented it to us in there, you know, pretty straightforward, that's what we like.
Yeah, so as soon as you're ready to make a decision, we'd love to see it. Where time is of an essence, for us. We're gonna meet all the time schedules of and get this project completed by 2028, and we need to include some of the stuff.
We don't want to slow you down.
Yeah, no, well, that's what I'm getting at, is specifically for this stuff. We're at a critical junction. If the city needs us to go forward with that, we need to move forward in that direction.
We're gonna discuss that with you, I think Monday, 21st. So we're on that timeline for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, that process, if you get us to go ahead, we develop a cooperative agreement, get it signed, and then we would include that in the design phase. I don't know if we're finished early where we're at, if you have questions, anything we can do for you.
I think you've really given us some information for thought, and we can mull it over and come back and so. You're going down the area that we want. We want some betterments. We want a little bit better than the status quo, but we're gonna have to come to a agreement with that.
No, it's a big deal,
Yes.
and especially for a small community like Payson, we understand.
Mayor and Council, yeah, just as a summary, we don't get this opportunity very often. And this will be a new gateway to our community, so we're really excited about that. We're excited to have these conversations to see what the possibilities are. We do know that we need to look at it as from a phased approach. We need to look at it from a funding approach. We need to look at it from a maintenance. But just, I know all of you have driven along I-15, or you've driven along a lot of other connector roads where you've actually seen some enhancements that have been put on there. So we would just encourage you that if there's something that really stands out in some of those other communities that you feel is more important than others, we might have to balance that, you know, at the end of the day. Another thing that Horrocks Engineers has mentioned in these meetings is that if there are additional costs that they need to gather in order for you to help you make those decisions, they're willing to do that. There was some very high level costs that were shared tonight. But if we started to narrow down the things that are important, or if there was additional embellishments or improvements or betterments that needed to be incorporated, that's something that they can help us with with those costs. So definitely be thinking about that. Share any feedback with staff so we can get that to them and we can get you the information that you need in order to make those decisions. And again, as quickly as possible so they can integrate that into the design of this phase one project.
Not that it, you know, we don't want to be in competition necessarily with Spanish, but we've got a great example of what a interchange can be like, and we certainly want to. And they've maintained it, and that's exactly what we want. And so I think we have got some vision of what we want to do.
Well, I would echo what Eric said about relying on the parks department, or whatever park department will be maintaining the landscaping. And internally as staff, we had a conversation, and Weston Barney was part of that conversation, and he gave some great input that we have since shared with UDOT and Horrocks and their team. And, you know, his recommendation was to focus on the areas where we're going to get the most visibility, the most bang for our buck from a visual standpoint. And so he wanted to see more of the landscape areas in the core areas of the interchange. And then maybe some enhancements for some signage, some Payson City signage could be, but especially the corridor along the Beltway. You know, if he was weighing, you know, where we should focus on and where we should put the money, he felt that would be more appropriate on those slopes of the embankment and those core areas around the freeway interchange, not necessarily along the Beltway. He was concerned along the Beltway with the narrowness of the planter for maintenance, for safety, and also concerned with the heat of the asphalt and the rocks and the damage that would have on the vegetation, and then also the salt and water. So, but again, let's rely on, you know, those professionals and those staff that, you know, can give us some good direction. I know Wes isn't here tonight, but that was some of the initial feedback we got from him if we were trying to weigh the options for the city.
I would think, at least from my opinion, that we would want to do the enhancement around the interchange itself and then continue with maybe the standard as we come with.
Eric, I have a quick question for you, and I'm thinking outside the box here, so. Yeah, Brett's not here, so. That, if you go out to Eagle Mountain, as you go into that main road there, they have a place where there's artificial grass. Have anybody looked at artificial grass? Because that'll be easier to maintain, or, but has anybody even looked at something like that in the interchange areas?
We can ask questions. I don't think we have an example of that in our system, but I'll reach out to our landscape architect and ask them that question.
Okay, because it's easy to maintain, and even on the slope, it's not gonna go away.
Well, and we are building a lot of walls to get this interchange to fit in next to the railroad. We're having to build walls.
Well, there won't be a lot of slope then.
Yeah. So that's, as we get further in the design, that would help us flesh out.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it very, very much. Anything else, council?
Appreciate it. I think we're gonna try and get on a regular rotation again to give you updates of where we're at. We are reaching out to property owners, just to give them the basic, here's the project. We're not having any conversation about acquisition yet, but just having conversations with them. Just let them know that the project's coming.
I do have another question for you. So in phase 2 and 3, are you engineering for the whole thing or just for this first phase?
This first phase of design that we've gone through has been looking at forward compatibility. And so we've done, in essence, a 30% design of the entire interchange to make sure that what we're installing with this project doesn't prohibit something in the future phase.
So if we can get funding, is there a way to do a design build the rest of the project so it goes faster?
Yeah, that is another question I have to do some research on.
Right.
Yeah. At bare minimum, we could fire up the design for that additional stuff. When we did the procurement, we did the procurement for the entire interchange, not knowing what was gonna happen from a funding perspective. Right. So we shaved time because we don't have to procure a team, but it's how we deliver the project at the end of the day.
So one last, I think were you saying that maybe construction would start late 2026? Is that what you're saying?
If we can get, everything completed that we need to, by October, November, we would like to send a package out to contractors for the dirt. Filling in the soils are, we gotta put in some geofabric, we gotta put in the right type of dirt and start compacting it. Ultimately, we need to put dirt on top of that. So an example of that is the 1600 South project in Spanish Fork and Springville, right on their border. Off the side of the road, there's been some huge dirt and some cuts that you've seen recently. That big pile of dirt is to get the dirt to settle on the final. We're gonna have to go in and strip off some of that dirt off the top so that we can do the roadway, actual roadway construction. It'll be lower than that dirt pile. That's the type of thing is we want to bring in dirt, get compaction over a year, so that in the spring of 26, we come in and strip off that excess dirt and start the roadway construction.
That'd be wonderful.
I think that's excellent as I watched that project for them to build that up and let it sit all winter and settle. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it saves by doing that. We're gonna need that time to get the permits from the railroad. By doing this early dirt package, it will save our project anywhere from 9 months to 18 months for full final completion. So it's really worthwhile if we can meet all of our milestones. to get something out this fall for, construction.
But we'll do everything we can to help that timeline function.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Is there anything else we need to address, Joe, that you got on the agenda?
Okay. Appreciate the information we've heard. I'll accept the motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Thank you.